Hello, it's Neil Smith again from Latin 101, and today, in the next few minutes, I'm going to introduce you to some basic ideas about verbal inflection in this inflected language, Latin. Remember what we've seen already about the way that nouns are inflected. We call noun inflection, or substantive inflection more generally, declension, and we identify three properties: the gender, the case, and number for every substantive form. And those properties tell us about the meaning and how the word functions in a Latin sentence. Similarly, with verbs, we're going to look at the form and identify what it tells us about the meaning of the verb. We call the inflection of verbs conjugation, and we identify 5 different properties, which we'll take a look at in just a moment, called person, number, tense, mood, and voice. And as with nouns, identifying these properties are going to tell us what the verb means and how it functions in a sentence. The very first thing that we can learn from looking at the form of a verb is what kind of statement are we talking about. This is what the grammatical term mood refers to, and that's really the root of the same word as we have in English as mode. So if you want to think about this as telling you what mode of statement is this form, that's equally legitimate. Moods that we're going to see include the indicative mood, which indicates that you're making a factual statement, the imperative mood, which means that the statement is a command, and the subjunctive mood, which refers to other kinds of non-factual or hypothetical conditions that we'll look at in detail later in the year. We're going to begin with the indicative mood this week. But just to contrast a couple of examples in Latin and in English where we have a similar kind of contrast, the command form, the imperative, contrasted with the indicative, the fact-stating form. Da mihi, give me that, is a command, and the Latin form da is the imperative of the verb to give. Whereas in the indicative statement, creon megaram filiam suam Herculi dated, dated is an indicative verb. It's a factual statement. Creon gave his daughter Megara to Hercules in marriage. The form of the verb will also tell you about the subject, who and how many people are involved. These are called the person and number. And the grammatical terminology that you'll see is for number, exactly as with substantives, singular and plural. And for person, we use the terms first, second, and third. First person refers to the speaker, so in the singular I, or in the plural we. Second person is referring to who is being addressed, who is being spoken to, so you. And English no longer distinguishes singulars and plurals for the second person, you, but Latin does. And the third person, he or she or it in the singular, and they in the plural. We recognize the person and number from the ending. Here are examples from a stem of the verb to be, fui, it's a past tense stem, and fuit, the T is the ending for the third singular, so fuit ilium is a third singular statement. Troy was, Troy existed in the past tense, ilium, the name of Troy. We change the ending to the first plural, fuimus, and we have a first plural statement. We existed, we were Trojans, Troas. And you'll note here that it's a 2-word sentence in Latin, fuimus Troas. There's no need to indicate the subject, we, explicitly with a separate word. In English, we would have to say we were Trojans. In Latin, having that first person plural ending is enough to tell you that the subject is we. The voice of a verb indicates whether the subject is the actor or the subject is being acted upon. The active voice means that the subject is doing the action of the verb. The passive voice means the subject is being acted upon. We can take a couple of examples from Hyginus, and the verb appello means to call or to name. Italus, Italiam, ex suo nomine appellavit is an active form of the verb. Italus named Italy, named the country Italy. Italus is the subject, he's doing the naming. Whereas in the passive form, appellator, the subject is being acted on. Graike capra aiga appellator. In Greek, a goat is called aiga. So you could turn it around and make an active sentence and say, Greeks call goats aiga, but this is a passive statement. A goat is called aiga. So the same verb in two different forms, active voice, the subject is doing the action. Passive voice, the subject is receiving the action. The final morphological property that you'll observe is called tense. Tense tells us about both time and aspect of the action. We're going to begin this semester with two tenses that refer to past time, and they're both very frequent in Hyginus' narrative of mythology. The perfect tense and the imperfect tense are the grammatical terms for these two tenses. The idea of that terminology really refers to the kind of core difference in their meaning. Perfect really means a complete action. It's the tense for completed actions. The imperfect is the tense for incomplete actions in some sense. They might be ongoing, they might be continuous, they might be repeated or regular, but in some sense they're not over. The perfect is the tense for action that is over. Let's contrast a couple of examples. Again, we can take examples from Hyginus. One of the evil villains that Hercules kills is the Egyptian priest Busiris, who captures Hercules in the hope of making a human sacrifice out of him. But Hercules turns the tables, and Hercules Busiridem interfecit. Hercules killed Busiris, and interfecit is a perfect tense. He only did it once. Busiris is not going to get another chance. He is dead, even though his name is spelled wrong here in the translation. Hercules killed Busiris. In a related story, we hear about the equally villainous Antaeus, who hospites interficiebat. This is an imperfect form of the verb. Antaeus repeatedly killed his guest. He used to kill his guest. He killed his guests regularly, over and over. Anytime he had a guest, he killed the guest. So it's not a one-time single action. It's a habitual action of Antaeus, and therefore we use the imperfect tense, or Hyginus uses the imperfect tense. Other things you might see the imperfect expressing are different kinds of ongoing states or actions. Kogebat, he thought, he was thinking. Often that's the kind of action that's not going to happen just once and end. It's going to be a sort of ongoing condition. So we'll find it in the imperfect. Or habebat, he possessed something. Well, you might not stop possessing something immediately. It's that ongoing condition that you would use the imperfect for. And of course, the verb to be is a frequent candidate for that. They were errant. You don't necessarily stop being something at a specified moment. But you could, and for that you would use the perfect tense. And here are just a couple of examples from Book 2 of Virgil's Aeneid. The scene is the fall of Troy. The Greeks have escaped at night from the wooden horse that the Trojans have foolishly brought into the citadel and set the city ablaze, as this painting dramatically suggests. And Aeneas runs into the hero Panthus and asks him if he knows what's happening. And Panthus answers him with perfect tense verbs. Venit summa dies. Venit is a perfect tense. The last day has arrived. No more waiting for it. It's not still coming. It is here. It has arrived. Fuit ilium. And here I'm going to expand the translation I used before just a little bit. Troy existed, but in the perfect tense, which means it existed once, but it no longer exists. It is over. Now that's a very wordy and graceless way of translating fuit, but all of that is packed into Virgil's choice of the perfect tense in the verb form fuit. And this is one of the reasons it's so exciting to read Latin texts in the original, is we can see how much is packed into this language's forms of expression, and how much we would miss if we just translated was or existed. So to summarize, every time you see a conjugated verb form, you want to identify it with 5 properties: the person, the number, the tense, the mood, and the voice. And those are going to tell you how the verb functions in the sentence and what it means. In a following video, we're going to look at how you recognize and form every combination of person and number for second and third, singular and plural, in the imperfect and perfect tenses, in the indicative mood, the fact-telling mood, for both the active and passive voices. So I'll look forward to seeing you in that video again, and valete.